The year is 79 AD. People are gathered in the Forum of Pompeii. Gladiators are getting ready to fight, and people argue over prices in the market. But in only a few minutes, the city will change forever. Suddenly, Mount Vesuvius erupts. The ground shakes and a huge cloud of ash covers the sky. But this video is not only about the terrible fate of Pompeii, it's also about how people lived in this beautiful Roman city leading up to the year 79. For this video, I've spent over a month recreating Pompeii in 3D to explore the city that was buried by volcanic ash almost 2,000 years ago. From the busy town centre and the genius engineering that supplied 12,000 citizens with fresh running water to the luxurious homes of the wealthy. But first, let's take a closer look at Pompeii's very own Gladiator arena. Buried deep under the ashes, archaeologists discovered Pompeii's own Colosseum. But this wasn't just any ruin. It's considered one of the oldest surviving stone amphitheaters in history, built 140 years before the Colosseum in Rome. In addition to this spectacular arena, Pompeii also had two complementary theatres used for non-violent entertainment. But this amphitheater was home to Pompeii's gladiators, where enslaved men were forced to fight for their lives. Although most gladiators had the same status as slaves, some lived like celebrities, like the freeborn gladiator Marcus Attilius and the slave gladiator Tetrates. Historians have found traces of their names across the Roman Empire, spanning from Rome all the way to England and France. People would shout their names and cheer for their favourites, much like a football match in the 21st century. But unlike modern sports, these games were deadly. The amphitheater was 135 meters long and 104 meters wide. To ensure a comfortable experience, the arena featured a retractable roof. When the sunlight hit the audience, the roof could be extended to provide shade. In the arena, rich and powerful people sat in the front rows. Freeborn men were allowed in the middle, while poor people and women had to sit higher up in the stadium towards the back. Compared to the Colosseum, the arena was smaller in size, yet impressive for a city like Pompeii. The maximum capacity of the arena was 20,000 people. With Pompeii only having around 12,000 citizens, the amphitheater was clearly an important part of the city's economy. Needless to say, the arena was a major attraction, gathering people from the whole region. But visitors wouldn't travel so far only for an evening event. The events in the amphitheater could last the whole day. In the morning, wild animals, sometimes exotic, would enter the battle arena. Starved and angry, the animals would fight each other or a specially trained gladiator. Later the same day, the arena could be used to enforce Pompeii's strictest laws. Criminals sentenced to death were executed while the public watched. And finally, in the evening, it was the highlight of the day. Two gladiators fighting for their lives, man against man. But in 59 AD, a massive riot broke out amongst the audience in the amphitheater. A violent conflict between the Pompeians and the neighboring city Nuceria. The event is documented in a wall painting, showing the fight spreading from the amphitheater to the whole city. People threw stones and started sword fights in the stands. This event led to a 10-year ban on gladiator fights in Pompeii imposed by the Emperor Nero. On the other side of the town was the city's most important area, the beating heart of Pompeii. This was the city centre for the Pompeians, the Forum, a public space where people would go to worship, buy food, and conduct business. Inside the Forum was 4 temples. The Temple of Jupiter was the biggest of them all and placed in the north end of the Forum, a temple to worship the god of the sky, thunder, and the king of the Roman gods. On each side of the temple was 2 markets. The market on the west side was likely for vegetables and fresh fruits from local farms, while the bigger market on the east side was the place to get fresh meat. At the center of the largest market, archaeologists discovered a circular shape. For a long time, its purpose remained unclear, but soil samples revealed traces of fish, leading experts to believe this circle was the town's seafood market. At the south end of the Forum stood Pompeii's governing buildings. Even though the Roman Empire was ruled by an emperor, the Pompeians had elections to choose their local leaders. While this could be considered a form of democracy, it's important to mention that only freeborn Roman men could vote and that any decision could potentially be overruled by the emperor. The Forum's largest and most spectacular building was the Basilica, the city's town hall. This is where criminals were convicted and citizens gathered for public meetings. The Basilica had large openings on both sides, creating a beautiful atmosphere of natural light. At the far end stood a statue, catching the visitors' attention. The design of the basilicas in the Roman Empire has later inspired the design of several modern Christian churches. By the way, I've made posters and t-shirt designs based on what you see in this video, like this 3D recreation of Pompeii, or this t-shirt based on a painting showing the eruption. The products should be visible right under the video. Check out the link in the description or go to lostintime.io. Now back to the video. The Pompeians loved wine and luxury. Archaeologists actually discovered traces of wine and perfume production. But first, let's see how the rich people of Pompeii lived. If you were lucky enough to be a wealthy individual before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, you would probably live in a Domus Romana, a Roman house. Ruins in Pompeii reveal that Roman houses followed a specific design pattern. Outside, one of your slaves would guard the entrance to your home. Some houses also featured street shops, so people could stop by to purchase food or supplies. Some hallways featured floor mosaics to greet guests or to warn them, like this one that reads, "Beware of the dog." Inside, you'd be greeted by an open space with natural light shining through the open ceiling. In the center, a small pool gathered rainwater for the household, used for cooling, cooking, and cleaning. This area was meant to be impressive for your guests, and the homeowner would often invite his wealthy associates here for social gatherings and business. Small bedrooms were placed around the hall and throughout the house, not only for the master of the house and his family, but also for the slaves. The house also included an office for conducting business. The next section featured a courtyard surrounded by columns, a private meeting space for everyone in the household. In the back, slaves prepared food in the kitchen. Roman dining rooms were very different from what we're familiar with today. Upper-class Pompeians didn't sit down to eat, they laid down. Vertical, tilted stone or wooden beds surrounded a table, making the meal about relaxation and conversation. Your house was a direct testament to your status and wealth in Pompeii. Rich Pompeians would compete to have the most impressive homes, and the most impressive of them all was the House of the Faun. Covering over 3,000 square meters, the House of the Faun had its own bathhouse with heated rooms and hot water. We'll get back to how that was possible with Pompeii's complex water system later in the video. But what if you were part of the working class in Pompeii? Much like today, the Pompeians also had apartment blocks. On the ground floor, shops, restaurants, and bars served people walking by. These buildings could be up to 5 stories tall and house multiple families and individuals. There was nothing luxurious about these apartments, but they provided a safe place to live for ordinary Romans and travelers visiting the city. Now let's take a look at how the Pompeians produced 2 different liquids, wine and perfume. At the vineyard, workers are busy collecting grapes as Mount Vesuvius is getting closer and closer to eruption. Wine was an important part of Pompeians' everyday life. It was not only for parties and dinners, but often consumed in between meals and during the day. In multiple villas, archaeologists discovered Roman grape presses preserved in volcanic ash. One of these machines is reconstructed in the Villa of Mysteries. The grape press, also known as the torcularium, used a combination of lever and screw mechanisms, but before the machine was used, grapes were crushed by foot in a dedicated area. To fully extract the juices from the grapes, the worker would place the remaining grapes in an open wooden box. The machine consisted of a wooden beam connected to ropes and a screw. When the worker turned the lever, the pole would press out the remaining liquid. This made sure that all the juices were extracted. Afterwards, the wine would be partially stored underground. After about a year, when the wine was ready, it would be sold in the Forum's markets, served in bars and restaurants throughout the city, or kept for private use. Wine wasn't the only popular liquid in Pompeii. Roman perfume production is also well documented, thanks to preserved wall paintings. Since oil quality degraded over time, the best perfume makers pressed their own oils in-shop to create the finest perfumes for their customers. This was possible due to a custom-made machine. But before using the machine, the process began by selecting the right ingredients, such as flowers, herbs, and spices. The most common base was olive oil. while one of the most exclusive was balanos oil imported from Syria and Egypt. The wedge press had a carved stone to crush the ingredient and a shelf to store ingredients or the finished product. After extracting the base and complementary oils, the ingredients were mixed together and filtered to remove any solid materials from the perfume. One of the wall paintings discovered in Pompeii captures the whole process and the moment a customer tests a fragrance by applying it to her wrist. Perfumes added a form of luxury to the life in Roman cities, but it pales in comparison to this next luxury the people of Pompeii had access to. 2,000 years ago, having fresh water throughout an entire city sounds impossible, but that's exactly the luxury Pompeians enjoyed. Pompeii had at least 42 public fountains, freely available to everyone. Citizens could drink, fill jars, or wash their hands. The access water from the fountains would flow into the streets to help keep them clean. Water was not only available in public spaces, but also in some private homes. Lead pipes can be found throughout the whole city, both under the streets and inside the walls of wealthy households. Pompeii's water system was powered by one of the most ambitious aqueducts in the Roman Empire. Aqua Augusta stretched nearly 96 kilometers and supplied water to more than 8 cities in the Naples region, including Pompeii. Roman engineers built the aqueduct with a gentle slope across the entire region, allowing gravity alone to carry the water all the way to the connected cities. The aqueduct would reach Pompeii at its highest point, around 42 meters above sea level. This building was called the Castellum Aquae. From here, the water was divided into 3 pipes supplying different parts of the city. Pompeii's steep layout created a serious challenge. There was a 35-meter high difference between the upper and lower parts of the city. Without regulation, the pressure from the slope would have damaged the pipes. To solve this, Roman engineers built a series of water towers throughout the city. The water towers were placed in sequence, each one positioned further down the hill than the last. Water flowed up into the tower and filled a small tank with an opening at the top. This allowed just the right amount of water to move to nearby fountains, private houses, and the next water tower, making it possible for Pompeians to enjoy fresh water throughout the whole city. Suddenly, a massive cloud of ash and smoke started to cover the sky. The earthquake made rooftops collapse, and the sun disappeared behind the thick ashes. Over the next hours, waves of hot ash and deadly gases rolled down the mountain, covering everything in its path. The eruption lasted around 2 days. So, why didn't people leave the city? Well, historians claim that at least 2,000 people lost their lives in Pompeii that day, meaning about 10,000 managed to escape. One young Roman witnessed the tragedy unfold from across the bay. His name was Pliny the Younger, a famous Roman historian. Luckily for us, Pliny recorded everything he saw in 2 letters, describing the enormous ash cloud rising like a pine tree into the sky and the panic that followed. When archaeologists began excavating in the 18th century, they discovered something incredible. Beneath layers of hardened ash, they found hollow spaces where human bodies had once been. By carefully filling these voids with plaster, they were able to recreate the final moments of Mount Vesuvius's victims. Most victims died from suffocation after inhaling volcanic ash and toxic gases. Some victims were exposed to heat waves reaching up to 520 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, bodily fluids boiled, and the skulls of several victims exploded as a result. Others died when buildings collapsed around them. The terrible truth is that some died almost instantly, while others might have suffered for up to 15 minutes. If you found this video interesting, I think you'll enjoy my video about some of the advanced tech from the Roman Empire. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing.